ESPN, celebrating 150 years of college football.
What is the Heisman Trophy?
The first thing that comes to mind when you say Heisman Trophy to me, excellence.
The Heisman Trophy symbolizes being the best.
Winning the Heisman changes your name. Everywhere I get introduced, except in church, is Heisman Trophy winner Tim Burton.
Got the tight end at the 40, 45.
To me, the Heisman Trophy is the award in all of U.S. sports. That is the award we have flocked to and been intrigued by forever.
The Heisman, in many respects, is football's version of the green jacket.
I can't think of another trophy that has the same power, the same meaning, carries the same tradition.
But it does not come without its flaws.
I'm not a major fan of the Heisman because it's a quarterback award.
Touchdown! My main critique of the Heisman is we don't think outside of the box enough.
By its very definition, it's supposed to go to the best player in college football. So naturally, that sparks a debate.
This is truly the biggest moment in my life so far.
The American Game, presented by Cintas.
To football goes the honor of supplying the #1 athlete of 1940. Of the thousands of gridiron stars developed this year, one stands head and shoulders above the rest. He's Tom Harmon of Michigan.
My mom didn't know an ice hockey puck from a football, and my dad loved that about her. They tell a story about when they first started dating after my dad's war experiences. The first night, I guess they went to Jay Berwanger's house for dinner. He had a Heisman Trophy. And I guess 3 or 4 nights later, they went to Glenn Davis's house for dinner, and he had a Heisman Trophy. And my mom and my dad were driving home. My mom turned to my dad and said, "You know what? I don't know what the big thing is about this Heisman Trophy. Everybody's got one." My dad loved that. The truth of it is, when you grew up in a house where a Heisman Trophy is sitting on the second shelf of a desk, and you're 6 years old before you really realize what that is or what it means, the perspective is more healthy to look at that person who did whatever it took to achieve that and then realize that none of that is given.
The Heisman Trophy is considered the most prestigious award of all in college football and is awarded each year by the Downtown Athletic Club of New York. But who is this man Heisman that this trophy has been named for?
John Heisman was a very innovative coach. Before there was the forward pass, he was one of the leading proponents of the pass. He would send letters every year to the Rules Committee, we need to adopt the forward pass. But John Heisman really believed in promoting John Heisman. He was coached at like 8 different schools.
Everywhere he goes, he's spreading the gospel of the game, in essence. He was a really important guy in the history of college football. He invented the center snap. He invented the word for how to make that happen, hike. And then, interestingly, he ends up in New York in 1930 when the Downtown Athletic Club is being put together, and then he ends up being right in the middle of this award, too.
The Downtown Athletic Club was this beautiful building right down by Wall Street. It was a place where financial elite met, worked out, and John Heisman, the retired football coach, was their athletic director.
They needed ways to try and get more and more members. So Bill Prince, who was the director of the club, came up with this idea. We'll create this award, and then we'll have this panel of sports writers and sportscasters vote on it. And the idea was to bring publicity to the club, which it certainly did. John Heisman was mortified. He thought this was a terrible idea because he thought of football as the ultimate team game. But the club came to him and said they wanted to name the trophy the Heisman Trophy, and he said no. So the first one was the Downtown Athletic Club Trophy Award. They gave out the first award in '35, and in October, Saturday, a good day for football, Heisman died of bronchial pneumonia. And then, shortly thereafter, they named the trophy after him.
Weighs about 65 pounds. Put your core into it, but give it a lift.
It's a cool trophy. I mean, there's really nothing else like it. What does the National League Most Valuable Player trophy look like? I don't know.
The Heisman is enormously nostalgic. The sculpture itself, the leather helmet, this hand-out stiff arm in the old-style baggy football pants. It evokes this time that people think of when they think of this tradition.
Ricky Williams. Probably the most exciting thing to watch in football is a ball carrier breaking tackles. It's just a dynamic, active play, and they did a good job of capturing action in a statue.
Ricky Williams striking a Heisman pose.
The pose has a life of its own. Everybody knows exactly what you're doing if you strike that pose. It goes on everywhere. It goes on in Pop Warner football games. How do these 7-year-old kids know the Heisman pose? But they do. It has that kind of permanence in America, not just American sports.
"56 years before Desmond Howard posed for the Heisman Trophy, Ed Smith, a player for New York University, was the model for Frank Eliskew's clay figurine that has since become the symbol of college football's outstanding player.
When a person gets it and they hold this statue, there's a warmth. I feel that it's a part of me that they're taking.
Navy quarterback Roger Staubach receives the Heisman Trophy.
Everybody asks, hey, where's your Heisman, you know? I have it in my office in my house. Unfortunately, there's a few other trophies that are there, but they just want to see the Heisman.
It is my pleasure to announce the winner, Eddie George, Ohio State.
It's a good-looking trophy. It's heavy, too. I mean, Eddie George broke the finger on it when he went through the X-ray machine at the airport leaving from the Downtown Athletic Club.
They've done a really good job marketing that trophy as being a really unique thing. There's nothing like it in college basketball. There's nothing like it in professional sport.
Johnny Lujack, Notre Dame star quarterback, receives the Heisman Trophy as the outstanding college player of 1947.
In the beginning, Bill Prince wasn't confident that he could make it a totally national award, so he made it an award just for teams east of the Mississippi. But within the first year, he knew right away, oh no, this is a big deal, and people are upset west of the Mississippi that we're not including them. So that's when they started creating the 6 regions and having representatives in each region parcel out the votes. Prince didn't want people voting for 10 different people. He knew if this is going to be like a horse race that people are really paying attention to, we can't have 20 people potentially winning. So making the ballot just being first, second, or third and getting 3 points, 2 points, 1 point would keep things close, would restrict the number of people that had a valid chance of winning.
Do you see an irony that the first Heisman Trophy winner came from the University of Chicago, and most folks would not even know that that school now had a football team?
Well, I don't know whether it's irony or not, Rob, but I'm very happy about it.
It's interesting that Jay Berwanger is the first winner because integrity and character, especially in the beginning, was always part of who got to win. If that was not stated, it was certainly understood. Yes, he's a great football player, but he represents sort of an ideal that we as a country tried to embody in the award.
I certainly appreciate this great honor in receiving the Heisman Trophy for 1952.
You could pretty much track society, actually, by the Heisman Trophy.
Congratulations.
I remember the early years, you had a lot of the military academies win the Heisman.
We salute Heisman Trophy winner Glenn Davis, college football's Player of the Year.
You could see where integration took place. Ernie Davis, the first African-American to win a Heisman Trophy, was early 60s, and then you started seeing a lot of African-Americans start to win the trophy.
Marcus Allen was named winner of this year's Heisman Trophy.
Tebow now takes off. Mayfield.
Hollywood!
The Heisman Trophy is one of the top awards in all of American sports, which is saying something because pro sports mean a lot in this country, but the Heisman for decades and decades and decades and decades has been the marquee award in college football.
Man, this is an honor, something that, I'll never forget, something I'll always cherish for the rest of my life.
It came along at a time when there really wasn't any kind of national award like it, and certainly not in a major sport. And the whole idea of this trophy and naming a person as the most outstanding player caught on in the national consciousness, and it developed over time.
This goes back to 1935, and that thread, the past, the present, is very strongly interwoven with the Heisman in a way that other awards, they can't boast to that. That's what sets it apart.
the season's most versatile player has to be Army halfback Pete Dawkins, winner of the Heisman Trophy.
Well, the Heisman has the irony that it's an individual award in a fundamentally team-oriented sport. There's just sort of an incongruity about that. Why me? But, you know, I was 19 years old, and it was pretty exciting.
I'd just like to express my thanks to my teammates and the coaches of the ball club, without whose efforts, of course, a award like this couldn't at all be possible.
I kind of felt a little embarrassed to become a Heisman Trophy winner because it takes a lot of hard efforts of a lot of people. You can't do it on your own. I wish I could have chopped it up and given a piece of it to everybody, but then it wouldn't look like a Heisman Trophy.
Every word that's ever spoken about this sport is, we're a team, we're playing together, we're gonna do it together. Every person on this team matters so much. Nobody's more important than the team, except when they pass out that big shiny thing at the end, because that's about one guy.
Notre Dame quarterback John Huart is the winner of the Heisman Trophy, football's most coveted honor.
If you've got a player that's up for the Heisman Trophy, it's a campaign. You in that sports information office on that college campus, you're running a campaign for that award. It's sort of like an election, only it's sports writers that are deciding it and not the general populace.
It's funny, some of these SIDs and athletic directors will kind of play it cool, like, oh, we don't really do Heisman campaigns. Yeah, you do. I love the creativity of it, and why not?
Kansas State did a cute campaign of Colin Klein, as he was this big, bruising, running quarterback. So they sent out personalized Band-Aids that were Colin Klein Band-Aids.
I've gotten a D'Angelo Williams race car.
Teddy Bridgewater chewed bubble gum, and they sent bubble gum out.
I've gotten Gardner Minshew mustache.
I have my Antoine Randall L. mouse pad back in days when we used to use mouses with computers. I still have it.
These are just clever things people do to kind of keep the guy's name on your mind.
Swing for the fence. Just to have your name in the conversation, even if you're gone by October, just to even be on the list and tied into the Heisman Trophy is worth gold to these programs.
The origin of the Heisman campaign was really publicists going to luncheons, which were free for the writers, which is why they all were there. So it starts off with publicists for Notre Dame or wherever going and working the various sports writer groups that they attracted. But it also branches out in other different places, too. There were ways to try and feature your player in newsreels. Certain universities would hire state-of-the-art filmmakers at that time to make good newsreel footage, make their player that much better.
Vic Janowitz, a Buckeye beauty, a natural with a football. He crashes and dashes. He passes, punts, runs, a constant threat who strikes fear in the heart of the foe.
The original intent of those Heisman campaigns was just even tell you the names of the players, much less that they're really good at what they do. That was a different time when college football on TV was limited. So nobody was seeing the top players play every single week. And heck, for many decades, I'm sure voters were voting on guys they'd never seen on TV. And so schools would go to various lengths to try to have the most creative Heisman campaign.
One of the greatest campaigns in the history of the Heisman Trophy took place when Roger Baldessari decided to change the name of this quarterback who was playing at Notre Dame.
For 20 years of my life, I was Joey Thiesman from South River, New Jersey. Until the beginning of my senior year, when Roger Baldessari heard a Chicago writer offhandedly make the remark, "Hey, isn't that Theismann like in Heisman?" Roger called me in the office. He said, "Joe, I want to tell you something. There's a trophy out there called the Heisman Trophy. We think you have a chance to win that trophy, but we're not just going to count on your athletic ability nor the reputation of the University of Notre Dame, but we think by just simply changing the pronunciation of your last name from Thiesman to Theismann to rhyme with Heisman, we can get you that trophy." And so the campaign became Theismann for Heisman. I have buttons and banners and everything else. But Jim wound up winning it that year.
When I first started playing, winning the Heisman Trophy probably never entered my mind. And then winning it, it's beyond belief.
The Heisman Trophy is interesting because it just goes to the best college football player in the country. There's no real criteria for what you should be voting for. It's a nebulous award.
They give you certain guidelines to follow, but at the end of the day, it's up to you on what you individually think, and then you put your three names.
The Heisman Trophy will be awarded tonight to the nation's outstanding college football player.
The idea that it says outstanding player, well, what does that mean? Is it the most valuable player? Is it the best player on one of the best teams? It's vague. It's meant to be vague. They want it to be vague. They leave it vague. It's up to the voter to decide what outstanding player means. Some years, the award is won on the sheer weight of overpowering stats.
Andre Ware of the University of Houston.
In one of the closest votes ever, Houston's Andre Ware today won college football's coveted Heisman Trophy, outpolling Indiana's Anthony Thompson by just 70 points. Ware smashed 13 NCAA records this season.
To win a Heisman Trophy, first of all, you gotta have big stats. Everybody's looking at your stats every single week, and certainly at the end of the season. But you also have to perform really well in the big games.
Goes deep, got a man open. Touchdown!
How you played in your biggest games is important.
And you can strike up the Heisman campaign right now.
In your biggest test, did you rise?
When you're looked at as being one of the contenders for a Heisman Trophy, you got to make some plays at some point that stick out. You have Desmond Howard running through your mind and how big that play was. You get to the last game of the season and you're playing you know who. What happens in that game? What do you do?
And it runs Howard back with a little flick attack. Oh, my goodness. One man. Goodbye. Hello, Heisman.
Increasingly, we're seeing the Heisman be about moments. Desmond Howard's highlight was a Heisman moment. Everybody knew it. People are looking for that wow moment that becomes part of the zeitgeist immediately.
Inside the 20, Jameis Winston hurdles inside the 10, sidesteps a tackler, and dives to the end zone.
In most cases, there is that moment, especially when it comes to Heisman Trophy winners who are the most memorable.
Sanders takes it up the middle, 20, 25, 30.
People want to distill a season into a signature moment.
25, 20, 50, 10, 5, touchdown, double. Unbelievable.
Charles Woodson against Ohio State, a big game when he returned the punt. That was a Heisman moment because it's a big question between him and Peyton Manning and would a defensive player win a Heisman Trophy, but then when he returned a punt, it was like, of course.
Everything happened perfectly. It's a long kick out, kicks his coverage, and every player on my team got the block they were supposed to get. You know, the only thing that was going through my mind was striking a pose like Desmond.
Down the sideline, he's gonna go all the way. Touchdown, Michigan.
You know, I crossed the goal line, and all of a sudden my teammates crashed the party. Man, they dove on me, and whatever wind I had left, they knocked it out of me. And I didn't strike the pose. In my mind, I did, but I didn't get to do it.
My favorite Heisman moment is not really even a Heisman moment because the voting for Doug Flutie had already concluded when he throws that pass on the day after Thanksgiving.
Throws it down. Caught by Boston College. I don't believe it. It's a touchdown.
But whenever anybody talks about Doug Flutie's career or the fact that he won the Heisman in 1984, they show that pass.
He threw it into the end zone. There was no time left on the clock.
Heisman moments can be important because you see a player and he does something that makes you just go, wow. And that's embedded in your mind. But I don't think it's necessary.
Here's one of the plays that won Billy Cannon the Heisman Trophy.
Heisman moments used to matter a little more. They were part of that formula of how you win a Heisman.
89 yards for the touchdown that wins the game.
It used to be you had to be a pre-established star. You had to keep the course of what was expected to you, and then you had to have a Heisman moment. As the years have gone on, I don't know that that keeps up. You search for a Heisman moment. We love to circle it and say, there's the Heisman moment.
How about that?
But I think the coverage of college football has become so expansive that it dilutes it.
I think of a lot of other guys who've won Heismans, and I don't remember there being like one of those moments for Ron Dane. I don't remember there being that moment for Gino Torretta. If you're a Heisman winner these days, there's got to be a lot more than just that one that pops for people.
That is a Heisman Trophy winning run right there.
Breaking the all-time NCAA rushing record on a 60-yard touchdown run. I mean, that's a big moment against our biggest rival. But honestly, I think in order to get to that point at the end of the season, there had to have been other Heisman moments.
I always look for that consistency. Yeah, those Heisman moments stand out and make you think of that player. But that consistency is what really sells me.
And this fellow runs, wow.
Oklahoma's Billy Sims. I'm going to run like a crazy man, Sims is quoted. Not so crazy, he ran right off with a 78 Heisman.
Because the Heisman carries so much hype and is the focus of attention throughout the season, it's an easy target.
Within each region, you have 145 voters. Now, what's interesting...
Who are the people that should be voting for the Heisman Trophy? I mean, how do you fit into that category?
The Heisman voters are this group of former winners, college football media members, broadcasters, writers that you would assume are watching the sport every week.
There's a lot of people who don't watch games. I think they look at the stats. I don't think that they have seen this kid play in all 12 games this season.
Here's Leonard deep in the end zone, touchdown!
I'm sure that my fellow Heisman voters don't care about it as much as I do, because I wrote down in my burial instructions that I wanted my tombstone to say, loving mother, Heisman voter.
If most Heisman voters took it as seriously as Holly Rowe, I think the award would probably be a little better run. But it's not the reality. I worked with somebody who had a Heisman vote, and they were really more of an NFL person. I was like, this person probably shouldn't have had a Heisman vote.
When it comes to voting on the Heisman, I don't know if you should have to pass a test, but for a guy like me, I watch college football from noon Eastern Saturday till 2 o'clock in the morning, and I feel like you should have to be that kind of person. So yeah, I think there's way too many voters.
Let's give you the top 5 order of finish, and let's announce the runner-up for this year's Heisman Trophy. It is Deshaun Watson.
I have Heisman fatigue. I have seen countless times where the winner was illegitimate. I have voted for illegitimate winners pretty regularly. I voted for Lamar Jackson, who's an outstanding athlete.
Jackson, look out!
But the second I sent the ballot in, I wished I had voted for Deshaun Watson. And then when he won the national championship, I just finally threw myself at the mercy of the court and said I'm an idiot for not having voted for him. But we get caught up.
Watson, touchdown!
That would be like the national championship. It ought to be given after all the games have been played.
He's going for the corner. He's got it.
Vince Young would have won the Heisman Trophy instead of Reggie Bush if they waited till Texas and SC played. Everybody will tell you that.
7-3 Ohio State. Troy Smith flushed. Tim Shaw giving chase. Reverses his field. Got a block from Pittman. Going deep. Got a man in the end zone. Touchdown! Ohio State. It's Trubisky.
There's tons of bias in Heisman voting. The regional bias is the #1 thing. People who are voting in the South are going to vote for the best Alabama running back. That's just been history. We see Mark Ingram win the Heisman Trophy in a year that was just kind of a normal year for him.
And there he goes. Mark Ingram.
You know, as a Heisman voter, I would do my ballot every week.
We ain't done yet. Keep going. We're going to keep going.
I had Derrick Henry atop. At the end of the year, I actually changed it to put Christian McCaffrey in.
What this guy has done this year has gone a little bit unnoticed by a lot of people that watch and follow college football.
In the 2015 season, McCaffrey breaks the sainted Barry Sanders all-purpose yards record.
Have you been to New York City before?
I have not, no.
Would you like to go next week?
I would love to. That'd be a huge honor.
If I had seen Christian McCaffrey earlier in the season, I would have been banging the drum. Christian McCaffrey should have won the Heisman. And I think if more people saw him play in person, he would have.
McCaffrey, he's going to score.
Most of his games that season started late at night on the East Coast, whereas Derrick Henry's the star running back Alabama. He's playing that 3:30 Eastern CBS game every week.
Derrick Henry.
We all are always going to argue why so-and-so didn't win. And as a sports writer, I kind of dig that.
We hand it off to Herschel. There's a hole. 5, 10, 12. He's running over people. Oh, you Herschel Walker. Herschel ran right over 2 men. They had him dead away inside the 9. My God, a freshman.
You talk about your biases. There is an open bias against underclassmen from winning it. It was discussed, it was accepted, it wasn't hidden at all. So there's a sense that you haven't done enough for your teammates to get the Heisman.
George Rogers is the 1980 Heisman Trophy winner. Freshman Herschel Walker finishing 3rd.
George Rogers over Herschel Walker. You got to believe part of it was the fact that Herschel was a freshman, a true freshman, by the way. We have seen redshirt freshmen win this award, but that was unheard of in 1980.
Walker and Rogers actually played against one another that season, and Walker outplayed him. Rogers had a costly fumble late in the game, but Herschel would finally get his due 2 years later.
Twice, the University of Georgia running back has narrowly missed winning the Heisman Trophy. Well, they awarded the Heisman again last night. And this time, Walker won.
If we thought about the Heisman Trophy then the way we think about it now, Herschel would have won more than one. At that time, it was a little bit more of a career achievement award. We don't think that way anymore, and one of the reasons we don't think that is Herschel Walker.
In college football, there's always trends. You can see that in who wins the Heisman Trophy. In the big years when the rushing game predominates, all the Heisman Trophy winners are running backs.
Raymond Tierney presents the Heisman Memorial Trophy to Howard Hopalong Cassidy of Ohio State.
When passing becomes big, all the Heisman Trophy winning players are quarterbacks.
The winner of the 1990 Heisman Award, Ty Detmer of BYU.
Beyond the rarity of the wide receiver and occasionally the running back, it's a quarterback award. It's not the Heisman, it's who's the best quarterback in the country.
Robert Griffin III, 479 yards and 4 touchdowns on a magical night.
It's a star award. That's left out offensive linemen and defensive ends, and you have to go back to Leon Hart in the 40s to find a true lineman to win.
Leon is the second lineman to capture football's highest honor.
There's a positional bias. I will go down with the ship swearing on my life that Ndamukong Suh should have won the Heisman Trophy. In that season, he was the best player I saw on the field every single week. I saw him change games.
There's an interception on first down.
Ndamukong Suh was one of the most dominant defensive players I've ever seen. And the problem is it's tough to put a stat to it other than sacks.
Suh tracks him down, ball's loose, and the Huskers have it.
It's almost not sexy enough as an interior D lineman to say that's the best player in college football. But you know what? To me, that would have shown, okay, we really take this award so seriously. We're looking at everything.
You see some phenomenal defensive players. Charles Woodson is one of those examples of a defensive player that won it, but he also played offense. Whatever position they put him in, he was able to get it done.
Woodson, leaping touchdown.
The main reason that I probably will never take the Heisman as seriously is that the greatest college football player in 1997 did not win the Heisman. How the Heisman Trophy could exist the next year without having given it to Peyton Manning, I will never know.
No, not that year. Not that year. No, sir. Peyton needed his teammates. Charles was doing it as an individual. When you punted that ball to Charles, you was gonna pay for it. Then he go to receiver and do it for his quarterback. Then he goes back to DB and catch picks. What he did that year, he deserved that Heisman Trophy.
Individually, I'm gonna be good anywhere. Any part of the field, any sport, I can play the game. Good athlete. But something has to happen team-wise to really be truly a candidate to win it.
Charles Woodson. The fact that Charles Woodson won a Heisman over Peyton Manning is kind of mind-blowing to me because no defensive players ever win the Heisman. Now, if Charles Woodson had gone to Indiana instead of Michigan, would he have won the Heisman? Probably not.
Flanked by the famed 4 horsemen of yesteryear, Notre Dame's Johnny Latner is honored in New York.
Brand name programs are always going to be an advantage in the Heisman race. You know, Notre Dame players tend to do maybe better in the Heisman than in some cases they really should.
The fact that Paul Hornung goes 2-8 and wins the Heisman Award, that tells you everything you want to know about the power of Notre Dame. No other school could have done that.
The handsome quarterback for Notre Dame was selected for the honor in a poll of sports writers and announcers.
Maybe the biggest travesty of all the Heisman trophies was Paul Hornung winning the Heisman Trophy over Jim Brown. Jim Brown was clearly the best player in America, and Jim Brown also was black and went to Syracuse.
Jimmy Brown breaks loose for a spectacular game.
Jim Brown had a fabulous year for Syracuse. He scored touchdowns and he kicked extra points. He did everything. I mean, he was an incredible athlete, was a fabulous lacrosse player, and was just unstoppable as a running back, as we would see in his NFL career. But that was not enough to overcome the prejudices of the Heisman voters.
Hard to understand is that Jim Brown finishes 5th in the South and isn't even in the top 5 in all the other regions. There's no way to explain that. Hornung was a fabulous talent, as we all knew, and obviously he proved it in the NFL. But Jim Brown was the best player in the nation that year.
Brown on the receiving, and he races into the corner for the TD.
I'm not sure how you will ever get the bias out of the voting. It's just going to be part of what the Heisman is.
Going deep for Hollywood, got it!
One can make the case that the arguments caused by the bias help fuel the interest in the trophy. So it may not be bad for the future of the trophy that that's the way it is.
God bless it. Roll Tide.
Thank you with all my heart for giving me this trophy, and to my coaches and my teammates who made it possible for me to receive it.
Events celebrating the Heisman Trophy winners have always been a part of the award's history. But as college football grew, so did recognition of the award.
The Heisman Trophy for 1959.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have about 5 minutes until we are to join the coast-to-coast network of the Mutual Broadcasting System to bring you the presentation ceremonies.
The banquet and the award ceremony were seen in newsreels and broadcast on the radio. The first televised award ceremony was in 1977, when Earl Campbell of Texas won the trophy.
You know, when I was a kid and I'd get in trouble, I'd always say, hey, Mom, I'm in trouble, you know, so, Mom, I'm in trouble, I don't have anything to say.
There aren't really many other sports awards in America where you not only get handed the trophy, but you now have to perform and accept it and thank people and, in essence, tell the world something about you and your life and how you got there. But in the Heisman, you do have to do those things.
John Cappelletti is a 206-pound running back for Penn State. Quite a powerhouse on the football field, good enough to have been awarded the Heisman Trophy.
The Heisman dinner at that time was really well attended. 1,500 people was a big deal. And Cappelletti knew that this was going to be his moment in the spotlight. His younger brother's been ailing and essentially dying for years. And here's one of the most famous speeches in American sports history.
The youngest member of my family, Joseph, is very ill. He has leukemia. And if I could dedicate this trophy to him tonight and give him a couple days of happiness, this is worth everything.
His acceptance speech was one of the most moving things I'd ever seen at that particular time in my life, being a young man, and his commitment to other people, the emotion of the moment. Heck, if your strings weren't being tugged, then you didn't have a heart.
I think a lot of people think that I go through a lot on Saturdays and during the week, as most athletes do. You get your bumps and bruises, and it's a terrific battle out there in the field. But only for me, it's on Saturdays, and it's only in the fall. For Joseph, it's all year round, and it's a battle that's unending with him, and he puts up with much more than I'll ever put up. And I think that this trophy is more of his than his mine, because he's been a great inspiration to me.
When I won it, we had just played Michigan in 1974. And it was Monday afternoon. Got a call from the Downtown Athletic Club. and said that they had a ticket for me to get on the plane and come to New York. They were going to take me to the downtown athletic club, and there'll be a couple other people, and they were going to announce who was the Heisman Trophy winner. Well, got to New York and went to the downtown athletic club, and I was the only one there. It was a lot different than it is now, where you have 3 or 4 or 5 people in, and the guys are all sitting up front, and they make the announcement, and it's a big TV show and all that.
The winner is Lamar Jackson of the University of Louisville.
The show had kind of bounced around different stations, different formats, until '94 when ESPN takes it over, and now you've got a very consistent product, like the Oscars. How do you turn the handing over of a trophy into must-see TV? And that show does a great job of that.
The Heisman Trophy ceremony was the first of many, and now you have the College Football Awards, you do have the ESPY Awards and NFL Honors, and so it is a trailblazer in terms of award shows and programming.
Heisman winners joining me on stage, all the way from Johnny Latner, 1953, around to Mark Ingram, way back in 2009 on this side, and they are ready to salute a new member in this fraternity.
The Heisman Trophy is the most important fraternity in all of sports. At the end, they have a tradition where all of the Heisman Trophy winners who are present at the ceremony come and stand on the stage. And I'm often just like overwhelmed by, wow, it is a diverse group of what is the best of America. The melting pot that we are is also represented in the Heisman Trophy.
Ricky Williams of the University of Texas.
I remember when I won the Heisman Trophy, looking around the room and realizing, wow, I grew up watching Marcus Allen and Bo Jackson and Earl Campbell, and to know that I was going to have my picture on the wall with these greats, it was beyond description.
I'm certainly most honored at the valuable award.
To distill down excellence, to distill down the sense of achievement and embody it in a single person has a real power to it. And it makes all of us who have had the good fortune of being selected realize that we have a responsibility to live up to the standard that the Heisman has come to represent.
The Heisman Trophy winner should have the qualification of being an outstanding athlete and most of all, the outstanding person off the field.
The Los Angeles County District Attorney has just filed murder charges against Orenthal James O.J. Simpson.
All of the Heisman winners aren't pure as the driven snow. Many, not all, but many of them have had issues in their lives, so no one is trying to cast them as being perfect.
Billy Cannon, a former football hero with Louisiana State University and the pros, has now run into big trouble with the federal government. He's been charged in connection with a major counterfeiting scheme.
You want someone who wins the Heisman Trophy that's going to represent the trophy in a classy way, someone that you'll be proud of to be a Heisman Trophy winner. I feel there's standards that come along, so you want character to be a big part of that, actually.
Most guys do honor the tradition of the Heisman Trophy. Obviously, even when you're presidents of the United States, there's going to be some that don't do it quite as well as the others and can tarnish it a little bit.
A Florida crime lab report shows DNA samples taken from Florida State quarterback Jameis Winston connect him to the woman accusing him of a December 2012 sexual assault.
I'm pretty sure it's going to hang over this kid's head all the way through the close of Heisman voting.
As I vote, character does matter. I didn't vote for Jameis Winston. There were questions surrounding his character at that time, and I didn't think that that was Heisman worthy. He won the Heisman, despite these allegations hanging over his head.
I personally don't take character into consideration because I don't claim to know these guys. You do see sometimes references to a clause on the Heisman's website that refers to winning with integrity, but it's not actually on the ballot. You know, there's nothing on the ballot that says to consider that. It just says outstanding player.
It is my pleasure to report that Reggie Bush ran away with the Heisman Trophy yesterday.
The NCAA found Bush received illegal gifts and benefits over the 2005 season and ruled him ineligible.
The move by Reggie Bush today, forfeiting his Heisman Trophy, essentially is the end of a 4-year saga involving Bush and USC football.
Reggie Bush was and still is the only player to ever forfeit his Heisman.
Should Reggie Bush have given back his Heisman Trophy? Hell no. Hell no. Why should he give it back? He earned it. Reggie Bush dominated college football. He dominated the conversation in college football. He was electrifying, he was exciting, he was part of a great team. He happens to be in the backfield with another Heisman Trophy winner.
Reiner gonna try to sneak it ahead. He got in. Touchdown, SC!
O.J., in the late 1960s, he earned the Heisman Trophy. Later on, of course, O.J. would come to be infamous for other things, but you can't erase history. You shouldn't rewrite it. So anytime they try to force someone to relinquish something that they've already earned, it doesn't erase it in the minds of the people who saw this transpire.
Cam Newton is this year's Heisman Trophy winner. He was given the honor despite accusation that Newton's father tried to solicit cash from another college to get his son to play for them.
When Cam Newton won, there was a great deal of scrutiny whether he or his family or someone had been paid. And I'm not comfortable saying which Heisman Trophy winner it was, but this person pulled Cam Newton into a room and he said, "Look me in the eye. Are we going to have to come and take this trophy back from you?" And this previous Heisman winner said that Cam looked at me and said, "No, sir." I'm not sure that this Heisman Trophy winner cared one iota whether Cam or his family or anybody else got any money. I don't know that he cared. But what he did care about, was there a situation going to arise that would embarrass the Heisman Trophy? And that he cared about very deeply.
Thank you.
Let me tell you, this is one of the biggest moments of my life, which there's two up to date. One is receiving this trophy, and the other was when the United States Marines let me put this uniform on.
For the early era of the Heisman Trophy, it was really legendary because a lot of those men were fighting in wars. These guys were going to college and playing college football and then going and fighting for their country. So I think there was an emotional element to some of the early trophy winners. Those were the best and brightest of us, and those heroes we continue to look up to, whether they were playing football or fighting for their country.
People like Niall Kinnick or people like my dad, post-graduation immediately, those guys were in the service. Both were pilots.
I believe, and truthfully, that that was the toughest yardage that I ever had to make.
My dad was fortunate. My dad went down twice, and he walked out of both of those experiences. Niall Kinnick didn't.
Niall Kinnick was a kid from Iowa. Iowa did not have a great football program, and there was pressure for him maybe to go elsewhere, but he was an Iowa kid, so I'm going to go to Iowa. He leads Iowa to a great season, and he ends up winning the 1939 Heisman Trophy.
The war in Europe starts in September 1939. Here it is in December of 1939. He wins the trophy, and he gives an impassioned speech.
I thank God I was warring on the gridirons of the Midwest and not on the battlefields of Europe.
Back then, the speech was on radio. And this young man has the presence of mind to note how fortunate he is to be living in the United States, where winning and losing was about a football game and not about life and death.
Thank
you. War breaks out. He enlists in the Navy in 1943 in Venezuela on a training mission about 4 miles out from the carrier. They notice the plane starts leaking fuel. And he then crashed the plane into the water, but the body was never recovered. It's such a tragic story because it's really a story of what might have been.
What's your call? Heads.
The Big Ten decided to honor Kinnick by producing a commemorative coin which has his image on it. And they used this since the 1960s as the coin flip for each game that they play in the Big Ten.
That's tails.
I think if you're not really versed in Iowa football, I don't think you quite get the magnitude of Niall Kinnick. The stadium is named after him. They play part of his Heisman speech before every football game there. He is such a big part of the Heisman legacy because of the man he was, not just because of the football player he was.
grew up in Ohio in the 70s, and you had Archie Griffin, who is your idol, the one guy that's ever won 2 Heisman trophies.
Deep down in my heart, to tell you the truth, I wanted to win it my senior year. I wanted to win it because I had won it my junior year, and Coach Hayes used to have this saying, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. You never stay the same. So for me to be better than I was the year before, I needed to win the Heisman Trophy.
The aggregate votes by over 2.5 to 1, greater than his margin last year, the 41st winner of the Heisman, Archie Griffin.
He represents the trophy like he wanted represented. If anybody had won twice, you know, you don't want it to be a jerk, right? You don't want it to be a guy like, I can't believe that guy won twice. But, I mean, this guy, man, he is what the Heisman's all about.
He exudes class. Archie will always be in the Mount Rushmore of Heisman winners. Numerous guys have been finalists a couple times or won it one year and gotten close another year, but it was different in 74 and 75. Attention spans, as we all know, aren't what they used to be, and I just think voters tend to want to look in a different direction.
Everybody likes the new guy. Voting trends will just tell you that we're not going to have a repeat winner. Archie Griffin is the ultimate gentleman. So if only one guy in American sports history is going to have that title of 2-time Heisman winner, sort of happy it's Archie.
Billy Testaverde.
What do you think about this moment?
We're talking about a trophy that's given out annually to one person, and one person gets to join that fraternity and be forever known as Heisman Trophy winner.
Folks, got one man to beat. He dodges him at the 10 to the 5. Touchdown, Auburn!
Legends build up around these Heisman Trophy winners, but I think a lot of those men lived up to those legends.
He's gonna go all the way!
Going to New York and actually hearing my name being called was still something I think about today, like, wow, man. I can't even put the words on it right now, but it was pretty cool.
If you're a college football player and you get handed that bronze trophy, it means something. It marks you forever as not just the most outstanding player that season in college football, but it marks you forever in the history of the game as a representative of the greatness of college football.
Tonight is Tony's night.
Being selected as the most outstanding, and I gotta say that again, the most outstanding collegiate football player that particular year, it's one hell of a feeling.
It is an invisible badge worn proudly by each winner, and echoing for all to hear, this man, in his year, was the very best.